Welcome to let's just go with a coronavirus version of the talk with AVC. I am, of course, AVC, and I'm continuing my sports talk show podcast. Unfortunately, due to all the corona stuff, everything was canceled. Baseball, season, spring training, and opening start to the season has been delayed, which is very sad. Hockey and NBA have been suspended. Don't know when or if they'll return this season. So you wouldn't think there's a ton to talk about, but there actually is. There's some stuff to talk about because thank God for the NFL. NFL free agency has started on time, and boy, was it as crazy as we thought it was going to be. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Let's start. Actually, the biggest thing didn't really even happen there. It was really with the NFLPA. The NFLPA, which is the NFL Players Association, which is the organization that represents the players' rights in the NFL, reached a new agreement with the owners recently by literally the slimmest of margins in the player votes, despite a lot of star players, Aaron Rodgers, J.J. Watt, Russell Wilson, not happy with the new deal. Basically, one of the main things they were talking about was splits in profit margins, who gets the most amount of money out of the way when the league runs. And it turns out the owners will still take a major cut of it, still leaving the players very low in terms of how much of a percentage of the money the league is making they're getting. It does raise minimum salaries. Weed testing is abolished. However, this came at another price, is that we will now have an extra game on the schedule, which is good or bad depending on how you choose to view it, without an extra bye week. They'll also be adding 14 playoff teams, starting as soon as next season. I personally am not the biggest fan of that, but you got to get those playoff ticket sales, right? I mean, it's a cash grab, basically, by the NFL. And I don't think anybody really wants to see like maybe a 7-9 team or a 9-7 team end up knocking a team out because of just coincidence. Like, think about how you'd feel if you're the 2 seed. There's no bye for the 2 seed anymore. I don't think the Chiefs would have had to play wild card weekend last year. So just think about that way. So let's get into the more, I guess, interesting part for the common fan, that's free agency. So most of the big free agents are staying where they are. A lot of big free agents are staying where they are. Chris Jones, Dak Prescott were both tagged, along with Derrick Henry, Yannick Ngakoue, though Yannick Ngakoue will probably get traded. Brandon Sheriff of the Redskins was tagged. Amari Cooper was re-signed to a 5-year, $100 million deal. Good for him. Dallas keeps their main weapon. I've been vocal about not being the biggest fan of Dak Prescott, and I think keeping Amari Cooper was more important. However, I've been talking about this all year. There was going to end up being an odd man out. The odd man out ended up being Byron Jones, who just became the highest paid cornerback in all football as he joins the Miami Dolphins. I do like some of the moves the Dolphins have made this offseason. They got a real legit corner, Byron Jones. I don't think he's a shutdown corner, but I think he's a upper echelon corner who can definitely help out your secondary. They got Kyle Van Noy. He reunites Brian Flores. Van Noy, I don't think he's worth the price tag, but he's a solid linebacker, and he's good at what he does. He's not particularly great at anything, but he's a solid linebacker. Drew Brees is staying with the Saints for another 2 years. AJ Green was tagged. Shaq Barrett was tagged. Justin Simmons. Jack Conklin joins the Browns. That was a great move, and I had actually talked about this briefly before Corona shut everything down. With Max on the show was, do you keep Derrick Henry or do you keep Jack Conklin and keep your O-line solidified? Jack Conklin was only 25, and he was a sought-after free agent on the market. This was a great move by the Browns. I do think Tennessee will be missing Jack Conklin this upcoming season. I really do. And as far as the Browns goes, I think this really helps. They'll be taking another tackle in the draft probably in the first round, so Jack Conklin can anchor that right side and really help protect Baker Mayfield because the weapons and the pieces are there for the Browns. The big travesty last year was the coaching and the O-line, and I think with improvements in both those aspects, I think they could be back to what we more so expected. Eric Armstead got a massive payday from the 49ers, a 4-year, $88 million deal, I believe. Chris Harris joins the leaves the Broncos and joins the Los Angeles Chargers. That was a surprising move to me. I didn't really think they were going to splurge on a cornerback, but they got Chris Harris, so that should be interesting. Melvin Gordon, a Charger, then joined the Broncos, so teams swapping to rival teams. Anthony Costanzo is going to be staying with the Colts, keeping the blind side of that great O-line intact. Dante Fowler joins the Falcons. I was incredibly happy about this move. Finally, the Falcons went and got a young edge rusher, and it also frees up moves that we can make in the draft, given that we lost Desmond Trufant. He was cut, and he signed with the Detroit Lions on a solid deal. That was a good move by them. Austin Hooper, the other big Falcon free agent, signed with the Browns as well. This move was a little surprising to me, given the fact that they already had David Njoku, but the Browns always love their tight ends, and with Kevin Stefanski, who was the Vikings offensive coordinator, he loves his tight ends. He loved using Kyle Rudolph and Irv Smith last year with the Vikings, so I'm really not surprised that he went out and got another one. I just figured it would happen in the draft. Corey Littleton, solid linebacker for the Raiders. Phillip Rivers joins the Colts. They needed an upgrade over Jacoby Brissett, and after a trade, which I will cover in a minute, they no longer are able to be in a position to do that with their first-round draft pick. So they took the 1-year option in Phillip Rivers. If he regains most of his form, they're probably a fringe playoff team. Ryan Tannehill, the half-a-year starter for the Tennessee Titans, is back on a 4-year, $114 million deal. That man got paid. And I guess deservingly so, he did a pretty good job. Emmanuel Sanders signed with the Saints. They finally get a real number 2 receiver. The Giants got the second-best cornerback on the market in James Bradbury. That's probably about a 4-year, $80 million deal, I want to say it was. Something around those lines. Teddy Bridgewater sweepstakes were ended up being won by the Carolina Panthers. And that's really the end of all the big moves there. But I forgot the biggest one of all. Yes, it is true. Tom Brady has left New England. He did not like the fact that back in 2017, Belichick offered him to the 49ers in a trade instead of Jimmy Garoppolo. Brady was furious. Kraft shut that down real quick, and they ended up sending Garoppolo instead. So Brady had always kind of had an ire towards Belichick since then, according to sources, so he just decided this was the year. He now joins the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. My thoughts on this move are rather simple. He went to the place with the best weapons and the best coach. Bruce Arians is a very good coach. I'm not expecting... Let's get this right out of here. You're not getting prime Brady. No matter how no matter how good of a fit he is there, you're not getting prime Brady. You're not going to get a guy who's going to throw probably 40 touchdowns this year. What you were getting is a good game manager and a guy who's not going to lose you games. But I think Tampa Bay's defense is really going to have to step up if they're going to become playoff contenders. I know you can say with New England's offense last year, well, he didn't really have any real receivers. Yeah, look at his arm strength. His arm's a little shot. He doesn't have the arm strength that he used to. Also, Bruce Arians' system is hard. It's complicated. Quarterbacks in their first year with him tend to throw a lot of interceptions. Echo Carson Palmer. And Brady's played in the same system for so long that it's a little hard to change that. And also, they still don't have a running game. So I have a lot of questions about this move. The offensive line is suspect. From a flashy standpoint, when it comes to the receivers there, it's interesting. I think, honestly, still as of right now, I think they're probably the second or third best team in the NFC South. This might be a little bit biased, but I'd probably rank the Falcons ahead of them just because I know what I'm getting from Atlanta. New Orleans is probably still the top team in that division with Drew Brees back. But again, his arm's a little shot too. Then we get into the big trade. So we'll start with the Colts and the 49ers. The Colts traded the 13th overall pick to the Niners for DeForest Buckner and then paid him handsomely. DeForest Buckner, who was one of the best players in the Super Bowl last year, is also one of the best defensive tackles in the NFL. A former 6th overall pick by the 49ers out of Oregon back. One of the few things Chip Kelly did right during that era for the 49ers. This trade is simple to me. There had to be an odd man out soon with the Niners defense, and the old Bill Belichick expression, rather trade a guy too early than too late. So you trade DeForest Buckner now, you get the 13th overall pick. You could take either Javon Kinlaw out of South Carolina and restock that position if that's what you want, if he's there, or if a certain receiver falls, you could end up getting a CeeDee Lamb, Jerry Jeudy, or a Henry Ruggs and give Jimmy Garoppolo a true number one wide receiver, especially since you just lost Emmanuel Sanders. So that move was pretty simple to me. Is there a big move? I feel like there's a big move I'm forgetting. Oh, right! We have to get to the Texans. Bill O'Brien, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing with your life? Honestly. Texans, you should have fired him after the Chiefs game. I mean, you give this guy the full reins of GM, and the first thing he does is he trades the best player on your team. No, not J.J. Watt. DeAndre Hopkins, the best wide receiver in the league. Now, look, wide receivers are not as valuable as people think. Just look at the Steelers. They're always replacing wide receivers out like a machine. And this is a great wide receiver class. So if you were the thing is the Texans don't have a lot of picks because they traded a lot of them for Laramie Tunsil. So if you're not going to have a lot of draft capital, you trade DeAndre Hopkins, you bring Randall Cobb in. It just doesn't really make that much sense to me. You know, the trade itself so much wouldn't bother me except for the fact that what they got out of it. They only got a second-round pick, and then they got David Johnson. Why do you need David Johnson? He hasn't been good in 2 years, and your running back core, honestly, was fine last year. You had Duke Johnson. You had Lamar Miller still. I think you still had Lamar Miller. There was a solid running back core. You didn't need any more than that, really. I can't imagine this is going to help Deshaun Watson. You know, you were on the verge of something, Texans, but it was just losing key players to free agency, losing Honey Badger, losing basically your entire secondary, and now losing Hopkins. And again, it wouldn't bother me so much that they did this trade, except for what they got out of him, considering that the Buffalo Bills acquired Stephon Diggs from the Vikings. It's a good move by them. They needed a true number one. It was their biggest weakness. Diggs seemed kind of unhappy with the workload he was getting in Minnesota. And Minnesota needed an extra first-round draft pick. Good for them. You know what Minnesota got out of it, though? They got a first-round pick and another pick. They got, I think it was a fourth. I think they got a first and a fourth. They marketed them properly, and they got a pick. They got a first-round pick. The Texans didn't market him properly. The trade came out of nowhere, and just when you're advertising or selling a product, you take the time to advertise it, to market it. The Texans didn't do that with DeAndre Hopkins. Again, I don't have a problem with the fact that maybe you didn't want to pay him, but and then accordingly, Bill O'Brien compares him to Aaron Hernandez when Hopkins has no character issues. I mean, what are you doing? As far as how this fits for the Cardinals, great for you guys. I mean, David Johnson clearly didn't fit in the air raid system. He's just not that type of running back. Kenyon Drake is a perfect fit in that system. So this trade made a lot of sense in that regard. They get a true number one for Kyler Murray, and now they can spend their draft capital on fixing the O-line, because they were kind of torn, I heard, between maybe drafting like CeeDee Lamb, get Kyler Murray's former top target, and an O-lineman. I would say now you have to go on an O-lineman. There's no reason to address the receiving core. You have Christian Kirk, you have DeAndre Hopkins, you have Andy Isabella, you have Hakeem Butler, you have Larry Fitzgerald dragging his corpse back on the field for another year. You have the weapons are there. Just build the O-line and build up the defense in this draft, Cardinals, and you'll be, I don't know if they'll be a playoff contender. They'll be great from a fantasy point of view, but they will be exciting to watch. And that's pretty much it for the big news from the NFL offseason. There's probably more to come as we approach the draft. Jadeveon Clowney is probably the biggest free agent left on the market. Unfortunately, again, with Corona, there's just so much not happening because of the world. But I did want to take the time to put out this podcast, and I do have some interesting stuff that I think I'd like to do now that I have a little bit more freedom to do it at home. Thank you all very much for watching the Talk with AVC. I know it's a little unorthodox, but hopefully I will see you guys next week.